Welcome, free thinkers. Do women regret abortions? And if so, what percentage? What help is available to them? And who are the National Organisation for Women, and are they actually neutral? Who funds them, and can their studies be relied upon? These are questions that will now be put to the test in this short documentary, the first of its kind on this channel this evening on the Hodcast. And before we get into it, just a quick request to subscribe to this channel and like the video and hit the notification bell if you find this video informative. Thank you very much. Let's go. The National Organisation for Women, or NOW for short, is a non-profit organisation that exists ostensibly to push women's rights in the Western Hemisphere. The organisation was founded in the 1960s and in its early days it actually did some pretty good work. However, over the last decade, it has taken a quite radical shift to the left. As you can see here on the website's About section, a number of things actually stand out that should raise question marks at best and alarm bells at worst. Most notably, the phrases feminist ideals and, of course, social change. The National Organisation for Women states in their funding section that they are funded mainly by membership dues, foundation grants and individual donations. Of course, if they cared to elaborate on where those individual donations came from, you would quickly learn that the majority of them come from radical left-wing organisations and funding groups, specifically in this case one Mr. George Soros's Open Society Foundations. So now we know who is funding them, we can understand two things. Firstly, why over the last decade they have lurched so enthusiastically to the far left and why they've embraced so many modern socialistic talking points. And secondly, why their net assets increased from just under $35,000 in 2012 to almost $330,000 by the end of 2015. Here is the article in question that I wholeheartedly refuse to believe. In this article, taken from NOW's own website, it speaks of a study which returned results of allegedly 95% of women who were polled that said they did not regret their abortion at all. They didn't regret it one bit. It further states that this contradicts other studies that found that women do regret their abortions, which of course they would regret their abortions because only a monster would feel no regret after terminating the baby that was growing inside of them. And after all, this is a Soros-backed organisation that has quite clearly sold its soul to the devil in exchange for a bag of silver. Now, before we get on to some actual stories from actual women who have had actual abortions and their feelings of regret and remorse over what they've done, I would first quickly like to point out this website, which is Influence Watch. The one you can see on your screen now, they have a number of organisations under their spotlight which they keep an eye on to basically gauge the influence and who's backing these people, what they're doing, are they entirely upfront and legit about what they claim to be. And they have the National Organisation of Women very much under their spotlight, and they have raised a number of concerns, and these concerns include lobbying despite not being actually registered for lobbying, political feminism, which bizarrely enough has found now actually supporting men over women, especially in Democrat primaries, on a habitual and repeated basis. The far left's old friend, selective outrage. Where would the far left be without their selective outrage, eh? There's a number we could go over, but the most recent was in 2010 when a Republican nominee for the governorship of California was called a whore by a member of her Democratic opponent's campaign staff. A far left political agenda. Bizarrely enough, the alphabet community issues and affirmative action. And finally, immigration and President Trump resistance. And as you could probably imagine by the length of this list and the things that are on here, these things have very little to do with women's rights, especially in an age where women in the Western Hemisphere can do, say, behave or gain employment in any field or any subject or anything that a man can do. So, is it true that over 95% of women who have abortions feel absolutely no regret at all? Are these Soros-funded, far-left, radical feminist, subverted, once decent organisations would have us believe? I think it is the king of oxymoronic, hypocritical and ironic of situations where we have feminists in charge of women's non-profit organisations who behave so callously towards babies and act as if even the notion of a maternal instinct is just a myth and something to be ridiculed. Now, we are going to finish the short documentary here by reading out the testimonies of a number of women who actually had the abortions and of course regretted it. This demonstrates that behind the fake and massaged so-called statistics of the far left on abortion, that there are real people with real feelings who are destroying real lives before they are even born. Testimonial 1 comes from woman A, who is 19 years old and submitted her story in July 2019. She comes from Birmingham, England. I was 19 when I got pregnant with the love of my life's baby. I had changed my pill, but we didn't wait the recommended 7 days. I anticipated my pregnancy a month before I took the test, as I was told to wait until I missed a period. My boyfriend and I talked about everything, including abortion, and we decided we would keep the baby. There was enough room in this house for us and the baby, and he had a very stable job. So why not keep our baby? Because when I took the test and I saw the 2 lines, I burst into tears. My boyfriend just held me. I realised my whole life was about to change. I couldn't finish my university degree, I couldn't get the job I wanted, and as soon as my child was in nursery, I would have nothing to do with my days. I was being selfish. I looked up and asked, "Is this really what you want?" His reply was, "I don't know. We are young, babe. It's going to be a big change." So we waited a couple of days before we changed our mind. Financially and practically we were ready, but emotionally we weren't. All a baby needs is love. But what if I couldn't give my baby that? What if I blamed him or her for not having the life I dreamt of? What if the baby ruined my life? My boyfriend and his dad constantly fight and argue. I didn't want this. I wanted to be happy and my baby to have 2 loving parents. So I did it. I killed our baby. I wasn't alone, but I had no friends to talk to about it. I was ashamed of what I had done. I thought everyone would hate me. It ate me up until I was only left with one friend who is still the only person that knows of my pregnancy. She didn't judge me. She told me that everything was going to be okay and that no matter what, she would never leave. And she never will. But my boyfriend did. He loved me and we began to argue all the time. We blamed each other because there was no one else. I will never get to be the mum of his children again, and that kills me. I killed half of me and half of him with one pill. I will never forgive myself. I looked down at my stomach for weeks, wishing it would grow. Wishing my abortion failed. Wishing for one last moment with my baby. It never happened. It spiralled out of control. How could I love a baby that I never had? The following is the testimony of woman B, who is 23 years old and from New Jersey, the United States, and again was submitted on July 2019. It's only been 11 hours since I had a surgical abortion and I'm a complete mess. This was such a fast and unthorough decision on my end. I just wish I could take it back. I found out I was pregnant 6 days ago, and on June the 28th by my long-term boyfriend. We only spent 2 days going back and forth on what we should do. Before we found out I was pregnant, we were getting ready to start our futures by enrolling in college programs, buying a house, and all that fun and exciting stuff. But due to us getting ready to start our futures, having a baby would have made it so difficult and such a setback. I wouldn't be able to do what I wanted, and he would have to make a whole career study change that wasn't his dream. But the thing is, we could have found a way. Everybody finds a way when difficult or challenging roadblocks occur. I always wanted to be a mother, but now I don't think I ever deserved to be one. This was my first pregnancy. I went to one location to get the abortion pill, but the woman there explained how the surgical one would be a better option. So 11 hours ago, I was there, in the chair, going through the most traumatizing experience of my life. Before the abortion, I had to get another ultrasound, and the nurse asked if I wanted to see the baby. I agreed. The image of my child that was on screen, I was 8 weeks and 3 days pregnant. The nurse said it wouldn't hurt too bad, but it was excruciating. The nurse said I wouldn't see anything, but when the doctors were done and when I got up, I stood in the goo/blood on the floor and looked at the tray and table and saw all this blood. I wish I could take this day back. My boyfriend and I haven't told anyone about this, and we don't plan to. I hope this gets better. Woman C. She's 39 years old, comes from Stamford, Connecticut in the USA, and had an abortion in June 2019. I was around 22 or 23 years old when I was persuaded by my boyfriend at the time to have an abortion. He came from a wealthy family living in New Canaan in Connecticut. I was naive and believed him when he said my body would change and it would be the best decision for me. I was scared and uncertain, but eventually caved in and did it. I regret it every day, because the baby would have been financially set with his family and mine. I feel like I have destroyed a life that was truly a blessing and deserved to live. That relationship eventually ended. I have been in many relationships, taking many risks, which didn't result in a pregnancy. I felt like I was being punished. I'm currently 39 and pregnant with my live-in boyfriend, whom has twins of his own, which I could better accept if I had my own child from the past. I realised I was manipulated and wasn't thinking properly back then. Of course, my old wealthy boyfriend didn't want to disappoint his parents and be stuck with a child at that time. I don't know how to move on. I will always imagine that child getting older. I knew my current pregnancy is a blessing, and I want to have as many kids as possible to make up for what I did. I can't turn back time, but I hope others will think twice before doing what I did. I will never forget and will always remember and imagine what that child could have been, or how he or she could have impacted my life and others. And now, to answer the question that some of you may have been wondering about the image on the screen. This was a 7-week-old baby that was aborted by the mother. Now, all we know is that her name is Christina, and she was lied to by Planned Parenthood. That's all we know about this woman so far. She does have a testimonial to give, and I will read that out in a moment, and that will be the end of the testimonials. But just to answer the question for those that may have been wondering, this, like you can see on your screen, is the end result of the lies that Christina was told by Planned Parenthood and the people that whispered in her ear that it would be the best thing for her to do, without taking into consideration her mental state, her emotional state, or anything like that. Christina, woman D, fooled by Planned Parenthood. Christina was told by Planned Parenthood that her abortion by pill would just feel like a heavy period. So she was unprepared for the agonising cramps, the heavy bleeding, and having to see the perfectly formed body of her baby. Christina was 9 weeks pregnant when she went to Planned Parenthood at the urging of her fiancé. She had already had a 4-month-old baby at home and her health was poor. Christina described the type of counselling she received at Planned Parenthood, and it is as thus. The counsellor asked me if I was being forced into it. She asked me if I was making this decision 100% on my own. She advised me to make sure this was what I wanted. She then proceeded to tell me that the process would be pretty easy and that I wouldn't see anything. They didn't ever use the word baby. They always just said it, or tissue, or the process. They never said anything about the level of development. They did tell me it would be too small to see anything. Planned Parenthood also did not warn Christina about the pain that this abortion would cause. After Christina took the pills, she writes about how the procedure was far from what she expected. The pill was not at all what Planned Parenthood told me it would be. They said I would feel like heavy period pains. It felt like hell. It was worse than labour with my son. The worst was yet to come. Christina was in her 9th week of pregnancy and as calculated from her last menstrual period. Since conception generally occurs approximately 2 weeks after that, at ovulation, she was carrying then a 7-week-old preborn baby. She was completely unprepared for the shock of seeing her child's body. Okay, freethinkers, we're approaching the end of this documentary now itself. I've been working on this for quite some time, and you know what? Let me tell you something that's most ironic about all this. I feel like I've given birth to life itself. I feel like I've played a small part in redeeming the thousands of lives that were never born, let alone lost. Listening to the testimonies of these poor women really adds a great deal of context to the issue of abortions, which organisations like Planned Parenthood would have you believe is merely waste disposal. These ghouls genuinely believe that they are actually doing the world and society a service by doing this. The language they use, which is akin to Orwellian newspeak, in my opinion, terms such as it and the tissue and the most clinical and cold of all, the process. These terms are deliberately used to dehumanise, and they are done to take empathy out of the wonder that is pregnancy.